Sponsor an orphan, and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. This is Preacher Moss live from the UK. That's right. You know, you're probably going, Preach, why are you live? Don't you pre-record? Yes, but sometimes when you pre-record, the sound doesn't work. Therefore, you have to go live because you are lacking technical proficiency that probably a 5-year-old could have figured out. But somehow your boy Preacher Moss muffed it up. So, with that being said, I want to give a shout out to my main man, Pedro Cavallo, who just dropped me off. He came to visit me. He didn't drop me off. We hung out at the hotel, kicked it. Pedro is a longtime friend when I come to the UK, golden brother. Shout out to him and his family. Also, he's a PR guy, the original PR guy in the UK for Allah Made Me Funny, long-term brother, man. Just a beautiful cat and came by. So I just want to give him a shout out and shout out to his family. Listen, yesterday's topic, we're going to revisit. I think it's important to talk about the unhoused. And I gave a little bit of an allegory about how we got to the unhoused. I'm sorry again about the sound, but I'm going to make sure that we talk about this before because this is something that's not getting enough attention. And what happens these days when we don't give something enough attention, when it does hit us, it really hits us. I mean, it has probably a more profound impact than it actually should. So in that vein, I'm trying to speak about it because almost the aspect of the unhoused is really a lot of people who find themselves gradually, but suddenly looking at the fact that they can't afford the home that they're in. They can't afford the rent that they're in. So we're going to make sure we're going to do that. All right. So today's topic, brothers and sisters, is something I wanted to spend a little time on. This is Disappearing Act, our Native American family. I am a long-term advocate of Native American causes. Let me tell you why. And let me break it down. The scope of oppression in America and the historical landscape of, I want to say, fiduciary responsibility for the maintenance of the land goes to the First Nations. It goes to Native Americans. And the overall scope of Native American narrative is something that we deal with today, though we don't necessarily value it the way we should. Let me tell you how Native American influence was so. When we were kids, there used to be a joke: every black person got a little Indian in them. Not from Hyderabad, but we're talking about in the United States. And I used to laugh about this. When we got the Indian hair, and we would identify with this. But in a larger scope, let me be very serious here. In a survival narrative, in a struggle narrative, it is spiritually, morally, and I want to say intellectually profound that we do have. Listen now, we do have a little Indianness in terms of our history. I'm going to talk about that today, but I'm going to come to you from a little different narrative, from the Hollywood version of it, because we've forgotten the contributions of Native Americans. While we are, and many of us watching the show, we are Muslim, we advocate for Muslim, we advocate for justice. I have yet to see at any long-term sustained effort addressing the crimes and the oppression against Native Americans, or advocating for the growth and development of Native Americans. I myself, and I said this on the show yesterday, I'm pledging in this program today to do better, to reach out, to educate myself more, to educate my Native American brothers and sisters that I want to help, that I will work in my capacity, because a crime has been perpetrated, but it's been normalized. And I believe that we have to get out of this space when we normalize something, when we look at it and go, well, that's all right. That happened X amount of years ago. It's not happening X amount of years ago. The Native Americans are suffering oppression up to now, and we need to do something about it. We're going to be talking about it today. Welcome to the ShOUT Show, live from London. I'm Preacher Moss. Let's roll. All right, we're back. I can see right now, looking in the comment section, that this subject has touched several people. So, what I'm going to do before I get into the meat of the discussion is I want to make sure we welcome. At least I got this part right, Satana. At least I shouted out everybody in the ShOUT Show in the pre-recordings. I shouted out all our regulars, all our stars. Now you might not have heard it, but I shouted out. So let's get into this space here. Shout out to Sister Ree. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Beloved, good to see you on the show. Peace and blessings to you and your family. That will be Derek and Brother Chase. Much love. Next up, we got Sister Christy Santiago. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear sister, hope that you're doing well and you're feeling better. Not about you. My mom had some cataracts surgery. I hope your eyes are coming along well too. We wish you a speedy recovery. May Allah give you shifa. Next up, Sister Ika tuning in, checking in all the way from Melbourne. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace to you and your family. Thank you so much for joining us. Next up, my main man, Altar for she better known as Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down. How you doing, beloved? Our Canadian envoy to the show. Almost demoted you. Almost said Canadian ambassador. Canadian envoy to the show. Altar, good to see you in the house. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, beloved. Nice to see you. My main man, Eric Carter. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Eric, where you at these days? You still in Houston or you move around, man? Sometimes I don't know about you, Eric. I don't know about you, Eric, but I'm glad that you're here on the program, man. Allah bless you. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my good friend. And of course, perpetrating, we have Sister Satana Whitfield. And this is what I'm saying, perpetrating. She says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I believe that part. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Here's the problem. She goes, welcome SOS family. Hiya and cheerio, preacher. She didn't say cheerio before. She said, what up? G'day, mate. Like a female Muslim crocodile Dundee. She had the whole continent wrong. And now she's trying to get up here on the banner. I'm not stupid. And I know my accents, sisters. You can't be doing that stuff. You got to admit your mistake. I'm admitting my mistakes. I'm admitting I'm having technical difficulties. And you won't come clean on bigging up the wrong continent. A whole continent. They ain't even close. Shout out to Sister Tana. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much. All right. So let me tell y'all where I'm coming from with this thing, because this is a little deep-seated. This is kind of deep-seated. Growing up, my father, may Allah be pleased with him, my father loved Westerns. When I say Westerns, I don't mean just John Wayne. I'm talking about, not Cisco Kid. I'm talking about, not even Lone Ranger. I'm talking about people like Tex Ritter, Chuck Connor, the Rifleman, Gunsmoke, Ponderosa. And all of these stories have something in common. That when there wasn't a bad man, there was a white man, and that bad man was usually a red man. And as kids, we would root against the Native Americans. But we weren't calling them Native Americans. We weren't calling them First Nation. We would call them Indians. Them damn Indians. INJUNS, Indians. And we would root for them because it was like the only time you could root with the white people or white supremacy and feel good. Get them engines. And then you start changing because my dad and my mom one day, they said, they cut off the TV. They said, we're not going to root against the Indians. And what happened was my father used to work and build health. He was a consultant to build healthcare facilities on the reservations. And through that experience, he became extremely sensitized to the struggles of Native Americans. And he made me sensitized to the struggles of Native Americans. And because of that, even now, it's very, if there's a movie where I feel like Native Americans are not being properly represented, I just don't watch. I cut it off. It does something to my soul. That being said, there's two movies as a child that frame the conversation I'm about to have right now. Two movies. The first movie was released in 1971. It was called Billy Jack. In the movie Billy Jack had this white man who was basically the protector of this Indian school. They have Native Americans, and the town folk were always going around trying to, just play the Indian school small. And this man and the woman who I think is married in real life, Dolores Thomas, he was Tom Laughlin, but it was this fictionalized thing where they were protecting, Native American pride and things like that. And I resonated with it. And in fact, there was one scene where a guy comes to oppress the Native Americans, Billy Jack. The very famous scene says, I'm going to take this right foot right here and I'm going to put it to the left side of your face. There's not a darn thing you can do about it. And he went right in and kicked the whole snot bubble out the man's name. It was out of his face. It was funny. We loved it. But the brutality of people who were Native Americans and even the people who supported Native Americans, it was deep, even though the movie appropriated Native American customs and things like that. I was too young to understand that. Now, here's the deep one. In 1972, a movie comes out starring Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier called Buck and the Preacher. And I have to say, even now, I am spiritually moved by watching Buck and the Preacher because it's the first time on screen I'm seeing African Americans and Native American actors, I'm not sure, but African Americans and Native Americans talking about historical narrative about their place in the country at that time. If you haven't seen Buck and the Preacher, get Buck and the Preacher because it comes right after the release of slavery, and you have African Americans who are expressing their right to be free, expressing their right to be business people, entrepreneurs, to be frontier for. These are people leaving plantations, moving west, and in moving west, they are encountering Native Americans. Let me give you this scene. Buck and the Preacher are running away from, I think it was a bank robbery that they did. And essentially what happened was these marauders would attack the black people who were trying to go west for freedom, trying to go to Denver, Colorado. I believe it was Denver, Colorado. And Buck and the Preacher were riding a horse, and they come to this space, this opening, if you will. They come to this opening, and Sidney Poitier tells them to get down off your horse. And of course, Harry Belafonte, you crazy Negro? He's like, get down off your horse. And they got down off their horse, and this beautiful parade of Native Americans comes through, not attacking them, but there's a conversation had. Now, I know this is a movie. This is a movie, but this is really built off a historical. This is real. This is real. Where Sidney Poitier is negotiating for safe passage of these free slaves into this land, talking to Native Americans. They are paying for, and it's a barter. But it was interesting because they start talking about how, even though they've been oppressed by the same person, the Native Americans make the point that, listen, in a time of war, you sided with these people and you fought against us. Those were the Buffalo Soldiers. So I think that part is really, really interesting. But the overgrowth of it is this: that in 2022, we're not talking about them. The federal agencies that were set up to protect Native Americans, Native American lands have been decimated. Thank you, Mr. Trump. And we're not having conversations about their welfare. Conversations about their welfare. We're not having conversations. And I'm not even included in the vernacular about common day, present day activism. You got LGBTQ, we got Black Lives Matter, we got Kanye West, White Lives Matter. There's no conversation about, and I don't like to use the word red lives. I don't like to use the word red lives. I mean, think of the idea of Native American presence, just sports. In the Major League Baseball, you had the Cleveland Indians, but they changed the name to the Guardians. Big ups to them. You have the Atlanta Braves. You have the Kansas City Chiefs. You have the Washington Redskins and now the Commanders. You have all these things that people have branded. And let me be very, very particular. People at one point branded Native Americans savages, but have now taken that image, taken that branding, and used it for sports and all kind of other things. I'm saying that we have to really take a deep, deep, deep introspective look at ourselves, okay? Because a couple things have happened. The plight of the Native American, and I think we just had our first, if you will. Look, San Diego said 25 cars and trucks with names as well. She had another comment. Please mention the missing and murdered Indigenous Native women. They just I should have pulled the article, so please forgive me. In Canada, which is a great place, Canada called BS on themselves and said, we killed quite a number of Native Americans. We put them in these schools. And while they do acknowledge First Nation status, they were going around finding bodies. Here in the United States, we won't call that BS on ourselves. But the travesty that we have done is that we've implemented a certain type of trauma whereby Native American identity and spirituality were wiped off the planet. Let me say spirituality damn near wiped off the planet. See, the evil, if you will. Can I say evil? Satana? The evil part of it is that these folks, just like in Africa, these people are from the mud. Native American spirituality is from the mud. African and African American spirituality is from the mud, meaning that you have a connection to the earth, not scorched earth, but to the earth. And ironically, this is the thing, land, the thing where I find, for lack of a better word, this is where they've been abused. You see, the thing about Native Americans and oppressed people in the United States, we're gonna leave Native Americans aside. You have people who come to this country knowing about the historical realities of oppression in the United States. They know. Africans know that African Americans were enslaved. They still come. Latinos know about the Zoot Suit wars and riots. They still come. People still come knowing that this is a reality because they feel whatever they have to go through, the benefits outweigh the struggle. Native Americans, think about this. have been subjugated to all kinds of terrorism and trauma, and they have nowhere to go. You don't hear about Native Americans migrating to Europe or South America. They are here. And the devastating part of it is, for what they've been through, it was cemented, darn it, that they would stay here. One word I'm going to use, and I don't want to get overboard here. Well, you know, let's take a break and I'm going to come back. Let's take a break and I'm going to come back. Be right back. Talking about Disappearing Act on Native American family. Be right back.
Hey, babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just got to hear Don't Get the COVID.
Don't get the COVID. Put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe, and your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID. You need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now's the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convene.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. This is your brother, Muslim comedy OG, Preacher Moss. I'm here to tell you that the Muslim Comedy Tour, the Super Muslim Comedy Tour, is sponsored by Penny Appeal. This thing is going to be the joint. You're talking about Preacher Moss. We're talking about epic artists. You're talking about the ShOUT Show, reporting live from the road. I'm the host of the ShOUT Show, by the way. Listen, this is going to be amazing. We're all doing it for an incredible cause. Right now, the people of Pakistan need you. You've been seeing it in the radio and the press. They're dealing with floods, massive floods that displace plenty of people. Listen, come out. Now, I know we got a lot of artists on here. I love them all. I'm going to tell you something. You've been rocking with me, Preacher Moss, the OG Muslim Comedy, since 2004. This is 18 years been doing this thing. We have a relationship. So come out and laugh. Come out, let's do Allah's work. Let's come out and support these brothers and sisters that need our help. Make sure you get your tickets. The streets are talking, and they're talking about you coming to the show. I'm Preacher Moss. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Super Muslim Comedy Show. I think I did that right. Take care. We'll give a shout out to Sister Tana for chopping up the ad. And I didn't know you took jujitsu, sister. You just Hassan Chop, Hong Kong Fooey, Hassan Chop. All right. All right. Well, let me get back to my point. Talking about the Disappearing Act. The Disappearing Act of Native Americans in the United States is not the Disappearing Act that you think. The Disappearing Act is the fact that there were laws that were laid out that had absolutely no good intentions towards Native American survival, presence, existence, and it was all tied into land by the constant pressure of the United States Army of moving Native Americans around the United States to absolve themselves, I feel like spiritually, to appeal to what seemed like their Christian nature. They engaged a lot of Native Americans in what I call the practice of treaties. The practice of treaties was, I'm going to trade you land, and in return, I'm going to give you these things. The things that they got were reservations. And what is sad now is, even now, the subjugation, if you will, the exploitation of Native American lands is now that you have people, business people, big corporations that deal with Native Americans who have already been ruined and screwed over and disrespected by treaties that were not honored, that they now come back and say, well, listen, we'll take that land, give it a tax base, and we'll build casinos. Over and over and over, what you have is, I want to say, emotionally, there's an etymology to Native American existence that, and probably in 2022, we really don't see it. We don't understand the viability of their language. I mean, think about this. We're talking about not just the loss of culture, we're talking about the loss of language. We're talking about the loss of books. You know, this is an oral tradition. Systematically, schematically, you know, unfortunately, we don't know enough about our Native Americans right now. And 2020, 2022, 2023, there isn't an emphasis on it. Can you imagine not knowing the language of your people? African Americans, we say, yeah, but you can go to Africa and you can find people that speak that language. But here in the United States, imagine that you are a Native American and you can't find the language of your people here. That the ideology of forcing Christianity on folks, and I don't mean Christianity like, you know, go to church. I mean, this is a forced Christianity. This is cutting your hair. You know, Native Americans, there was a spirituality of having long hair and braids, cutting your hair, changing your beautiful name. You know, some of the beautiful names, the Sitting Bull and Geronimo, and some of these other names, Walks Like Water. Some of these beautiful names changed to names like Tim, Christian names, John. And in that, the imposition that somehow, some way, I'm doing you a favor because you're a savage. I'm doing you a favor because I come to rescue you. This is the same thing that happened over in Africa. But here in the United States, I have to stop and pause, because the fact of the matter is we're still here. Many of you know I went to school at Marquette University. Marquette University is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Marquette University. Marquette is an Indian word. Milwaukee is an Indian word. Oconomowoc is an Indian word. Racine is an Indian word. Fond du Lac is an Indian word. Kenosha is an Indian word. Green Bay is not an Indian word, but Eau Claire is an Indian word. You have all of these words. And when I went to school in Wisconsin, you know what I noticed? And this is before they built it up and tore it up. Some of the people who will walk around campus who are inebriated, who are homeless, who are dealing with mental illness, a majority of them were Native Americans. High rates of alcoholism were associated with Native Americans. And in Milwaukee, it hurts me to this day, one of the biggest attractions in downtown Milwaukee, wait for it, Potawatomi bingo. This is an insult to injury. Potawatomi bingo. And they cleared out all of downtown. So you can't find a Native American anyway. You have to go way up north. The Milwaukee Brewers, brothers and sisters, were not the Milwaukee Brewers originally. What were they, Satana? The Milwaukee Braves. Over and over, we moved to have this political correctness, but we won't correct crimes. How about criminal correctness? I'm talking about in space. We got all this technology. We still can't figure out healthcare for Native Americans on their own reservations that we put them on. And I include myself in we because I haven't stood up. I've known about it, but I'm going to try and do better. And I'm going to hope everybody else is trying to do better. The whole aspect, the whole intention of this is like, listen, for however long I got breath in my body, we've got to do better. We're going to have some laughs and everything, but this is really important. All right? Why? Because as much as I may talk and joke, yep, I got a little Indian in me too. That's our show today. Preacher Moss on the SOS, coming to you live from the UK. Shout out to Sister Rabina, wherever you are. See you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.